We pulled just a PowerPoint on here.
Tell you, that's what I was thinking. By the way, I'm gonna be there this afternoon, so I steal some more, so I have something.
Oh, don't like this away.
Oh, well, they always say, if you touch them, you get to keep them.
I lift them all.
Come on.
Don't do it on you screen record on Snapchat or anything?
Oh, I tried, they fell apart. I'm sorry.
Morning, Mackenzie. Morning, Crystal.
Morning.
Morning.
Yeah, when you start, just hold on and minimize this. You probably click on that button.
Okay.
Right there for just one.
All right.
Yeah, started. You can just start the slideshow. Slideshow right there.
I'll let you do it.
There you go.
Perfect.
I don't know. I came in one day and I had a backpack that was hanging on my door.
Backpack.
How far is Marble from here?
About 40 minutes.
Just getting our phone.
Who? Oh, good. Hey, I
Right,
got
so
listen more.
for the first couple minutes, Kathy with a K? Carla with a K, it's close. Carla with a K with Global Life, she's gonna talk to us for a couple minutes, and then Denton Law Firm is gonna spread a lot of wisdom. A lot, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, yeah.
Well, good morning to everybody.
Good morning.
I'm Carla with Global Life Family Heritage, and I love talking to groups, especially people that are self-employed, because not everybody thinks about the kind of things that I'm going to talk about. I used to be a teacher, and every year they would come around and talk to us about cancer, heart attack, stroke, accidents. And every year I was like, I have great health insurance, and I would just skip it. And then one year, one of our teachers, when she was 28, got cancer. And we all saw everything that she went through. And she told us, if you don't have a cancer plan, you need one. And I'm like, yeah, that doesn't run in my family. And she said, it didn't run in my family either. I'm the first. And I'm telling you, we would be filing bankruptcy if we didn't have a plan. Well, that got my attention because I was a teacher. My husband was a teacher. And so anyway, I'm here to share about plans that help you and your family when you go through unexpected things like cancer, heart attack, stroke, accidents. If you have children, oh my gosh, they don't think about what they're doing. They just do it. And then the consequences happen later. I'm going to share cancer because that's our plan that's utilized the most. I don't know if you know these statistics, but 3 out of 4 families will see cancer. 1 out of 3 men, 1 out of 3 women, and it's the second leading cause of death for children. Gosh, it used to be a hereditary thing, but now it's environmental. And so that's why nobody is immune. I mean, it's in what we're eating, drinking, breathing, putting on our bodies. Some people think it's holding your phone up to your ear. I hope it's not that because I do that a lot. But anyway, the good news is 6 out of 10 people are surviving. When I was young, if you got cancer, you didn't survive. Nowadays, the treatments are so much better, but they come with a huge price tag too. And if you understand this, what I'm about to say next, you'll understand why people even get these plans, because there's 2 costs involved. The direct cost, that's what your major medical covers, doctors, hospitals, that kind of thing. What we help with is the indirect costs. Does anyone know what I mean by indirect costs? That's the biggest one. When I talk with people, in fact, we have an administrator at our school whose husband is going through cancer right now, and they go back and forth to Vanderbilt in Nashville. And even though those places are pretty close, that can really add up quickly for people. And so that's the biggest one. But if you're going through cancer, what are you not doing full time usually? Working. And so that's another big one. So loss of income is if you or your spouse or one of your children are going through cancer, I can guarantee you're not going to be at work. Living expenses don't stop. You still have to pay those monthly bills that keep coming, house note, car note, utilities, groceries, all of those things. And then everyone thinks their insurance covers everything, but honestly, it only covers about 80%. And some things it doesn't cover at all. And so, and then also travel, like we talked about. So that's what we help with. We pay you money directly so that if you go through something like that, you have money coming in. What people do if they don't have a plan is they use up their investments, their savings, their college funds, their retirement funds. They sell their home, cars, personal items. They do GoFundMe pages. I know y'all have seen people doing that. Spaghetti supper, silent auctions, jars at a store, just anything they can do to raise money because they had no idea of the out-of-pocket expenses. What we do is pay money directly to you so that you can pay your bills. And what some people have said about our plan, this is Whitney. We paid her $13,423. And if their family goes through something again, we're going to pay them again. She said, I was 23 when I enrolled in this program. I never thought I would have to make a claim. My family was a picture of health. Nearly 10 years later, my son would spend 208 days in the ICU. And the reimbursement from Globe Life helped keep our heads above water financially. We're so thankful for Globe Life. This one we paid $33,199.20. And John Clark said, at this time that we elected to get this insurance, little did I know that 2 years later, I would be diagnosed with not one, but 2 types of cancer. The Family Heritage paid the initial diagnosis and travel and has been paying monthly treatments ever since. I'm so glad I got this insurance and I would highly recommend it to anyone. And I'll tell you this, I've never heard of this before I got involved with this insurance, but we have a return of premium, which means if you don't need this plan, after a set number of years, you get all your premiums back. So I have a lot of clients that get it because if they don't need it, they get all their money back. But you know what? Some of them have had to use it. They never thought in a million years that they would need to use it, but they have. They got it for the money back feature, but they've had to use it. And they're so thankful that they have it. What people love about our plan is it's simple, easy to understand. Some insurances are kind of hard to understand. Ours is not. It's affordable. We have several levels of coverage. I guarantee you pay more for your cable bill than you would pay for this for your whole family. And then it's an easy decision, mostly because of that money back feature. That attracts a lot of people. I would love to get each of you information about our plan. The only thing left to go over with you actually individually is how much does it cost per month? How much is it going to pay me and my family if we go through cancer? And just exactly how does that money back feature work? And I'm going to have a drawing for a free gift. So please fill this out. You guys are hard to catch up with because you're busy people. But I learned a new skill through all this COVID stuff. I know how to Zoom. So I don't know if any of y'all, did y'all have to learn how to do that? So Zooming has become a big way to catch up with busy people. And so please fill in your name, your cell phone number, the best time to catch you usually, and then yes, I want more information, or no, I don't. And then also put what you're most interested in. And we're gonna have a drawing for a free gift. And I'm going to read one more while we're waiting. Family Heritage has been very helpful to our family. We have filed several claims due to my son's heart condition. Each time they have gotten us our checks in less than 3 weeks. We have used this to keep up with hospital bills and medications. We would be thousands of dollars in debt if we had not chosen to sign up with Family Heritage 4 years ago. And we paid these guys $136,253. It pays on what you go through. So if you don't go through very much, you don't get as much. But if you go through a lot, it pays out a lot. I'm going to come by, pick up your card, and we're going to have a drawing. So pass all your cards this way if you don't mind. Oh, thanks. Thank you. Oh, okay. I gotcha. Okay, who feels lucky? Anybody? Oh, somebody felt lucky the other day at Eddyville, and that's who I drew. Crazy. Awesome. Okay, let's see. Oh man, this person wrote little. Tracy. Here you go. I'm going to draw one more. And this one is Andrew. Gotcha.
Irish.
That facial cream's gonna look good, buddy.
Yes. Hey, I need a little bit of scrub.
There you go.
Oh, yeah, y'all give me jealous.
Thank
Silent
you so
bid.
much. And I'll be in contact.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hey.
Well, I sat on the phone. The times are actually-
Brandon, you wanna introduce?
We're serious, seriously considering.
Everybody here? Amy? You up here? Andrew, you good?
I'm good.
So we've invited Denton Law Firm to come and talk to us about the importance of LLCs for real estate agents. And then also part two. So you can't miss part two if you got part one. So part two next week is talking about your accounting and how that affects LLCs and what it does for your job. So I'm sure I could go on and on about how awesome Glenn is, but I'm not. But probably the best attorney in town. And well, that was his dad. Yeah, but here he wasn't available, so we got Glenn. Glenn is the man. He answers any questions I have. I mean, he is it. So, Mr. Glenn Denton, everybody.
No, first, I'd really like to thank Keller Williams. I've spoken a lot about a lot of different things. I have never, ever come in third after a wedding proposal like that.
I know.
And then health insurance after that. And now I get to talk about corporations. I mean, if this whole room isn't asleep here in 10 minutes, I'm going to be impressed. All right. So
Hey, we're here.
look, my name is Glenn Denton. Let me introduce my colleagues with me. I've got Cody Walls with us, and then I've got Hannah Simpson. Pay attention to Hannah. She is the smart one. The other two are just lawyers. I'm going to give you the quick 2-minute elevator speech in regard to our firm so that you kind of know why we're here. First, the Denton Law Firm, as Brian's already alluded, that's not me. That is my father, David Denton. We have 10 lawyers in the firm. We practice in all kinds of areas. There are 3 areas we do not practice in. We don't do any criminal work. We don't do any domestic work, divorce, child custody. We don't do any bankruptcy work, flushing the money away. We'll chase it, but we won't flush it. With that, everything else is a large part of our practice, and probably the largest part of our practice is real estate. You have in front of you a pad. It has my law partner's name, Lisa Emmons. And if you've not heard that name, I'm scared. I will tell you right now, and everybody in this room has friends that are attorneys. I know most all of them. Tell them I said this. I think that Lisa Emmons is the best real estate lawyer in Western Kentucky. In particular, if you know Dan Key, tell him that over and over and over again, because it really irritates him. With that being said, she has forgotten more about real estate law than I probably know. Okay. We have a full department dedicated to real estate law. Lisa leads that department. Ann Myers, who used to work at the Kentucky Department of Transportation for 27 years, joins us in that department. We have a title examiner. We have 2 processors. We have a traffic cop in Miss Hannah Simpson, who makes sure all of the planes are going the right direction. And it is just it's a full-time crew in the department, and we take it very seriously. In regard to what we're doing, however, it starts with everything from a cash transaction, drafting real estate purchase agreement, to the closing, to a bank loan, to a refi, to a commercial transaction, to a corporate transaction, to a bond letting. Lisa, for example, did the assemblage of all the properties where the hotel in Metropolis now sits. She also tore down the executive inn. Anybody remembers that? Things on there. So it goes both small to big. All right. So with that being said, one of the areas that leads us into is economic development, because as we've got on our wall there at the office, economic development, essentially, it's a real estate transaction. If you really think about it, it's a real estate transaction. Each of you all are licensed professionals, and you may at times think that I'm involved in buying or selling real estate. I would disagree with you. I would challenge that definition, because really what you're doing is you're being involved in economic development, creating jobs, doing finance, all of those things, all of the above. Did I already mess it up?
No, it was my fault. I'm letting people in.
Good. So as we go through that, I think that's where it is. Now, back when I was younger and I had just come back to town, I had the privilege of teaching real estate law at Paducah Community College for 4 years. Real estate law. This class was held on Wednesday nights from 6:30 to 9:30. I can promise you, real estate law is not the sexiest topic that can be discussed on a Wednesday night from 6:30 to 9:30. And I had a shtick, and I would go through each and every class with a shtick, trying to make sure, keep everybody awake, keep everybody attention, eyes up. Here's what we're going and talking about. I'm going to try and rekindle some of that old skills, because I brought 3 books. First, this is the real estate law book that we taught out of. And I'm very proud of this book because my name's in there, because I reviewed it and they put my name in there and whatnot. I hold this over Lisa Emmons' head. So the second favor I'll ask today, tell Danny Key Lisa's the best real estate attorney. And then if you see Lisa Emmons, say, did you know Glenn Denton had his name in a real estate law book? And she will roll her eyes all the way back to the top of her head. The next one is this one. So this is the real estate appraisal book. This is the 5th edition. Appraising right now, valuation right now is a big part of the world. If you've heard about what we've done, the PVA issues that we've had there, things of that nature. This is a really big part of real estate law as we exist at the moment. And you're going to see how that kind of morphs into this question in regard to corporations in just a moment. Now, I was going to read to you from one of these 2 books, and I had an absolute bet that I could put you to sleep in 10 minutes. Okay. So to try and change that, I'm going to read to you from this book. Okay. So let's just start and see how many of you all know this particular one. Okay. I know this joke and I can tell it without reading it, but my version's not as clean as this one. So we're going to stick with the one that is here in the book. Okay. So there's a big city lawyer, and he went duck hunting. And he went duck hunting here in Western Kentucky. And he shot and dropped a bird, but it fell on a farmer's field, okay, on the other side of the fence. As the lawyer climbed over the fence, an old farmer drove up to his truck, asked what he was doing. The lawyer said, I shot a duck. It fell right here on this field, and I'm going to retrieve it. The farmer shook his head and said, no, this is my property, and you're not going to take that duck. He said, well, I'm one of the best trial lawyers in the country. And he said, if you don't let me have that duck, I'm going to sue you, and I'm going to take everything that you own. The old farmer smiled and said, son, apparently you just don't know much about things around here in Western Kentucky. We settle small agreements like this, what we call the Kentucky 3-kick rule. What's the Kentucky 3-kick rule? You know it already, don't you? No? Okay. Said the farmer said, well, here's how this works. He said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick you 3 times. And he said, then you're going to kick me 3 times. And we're going to go on back and forth until one of us gives up. The attorney thought about it for a moment, looked at that old farmer. He thought, I can take it. No problem here. So he agreed to abide by the local custom. So the old farmer climbed down, stepped back, took his boot, and with his first kick, he planted it right there in the lawyer's groin. And the lawyer fell down on the ground. He reared back again that second kick, and he knocked his nose just clear about off his face. And with that third kick, he hit him right in the side, broke 2 of his ribs. The lawyer's laying there thinking, I'm going to give up. The lawyer's kind of a tough guy too. He said, no, okay, I'm all right. My turn. That old farmer looked at him and said, nah, I quit. I give up. You had that duck. Now, I tell you that story for this. As we talk about corporations, it's a tough segue. So hold on. We talk about corporations. One of the things we're going to talk about is that lawyer that wants to sue. Okay, that's just a fact. So as we get into and think about why would I want to have a corporation of some sort, as opposed to me owning property in my own name or conducting business through a corporation as opposed to doing it in my own name. One of the reasons is that big city lawyer that says that I want to sue. So in trying to prepare for this morning, I went out onto the internets. It's the young people. Hannah's taught me about how the interweb works with her book face and everything else. And so I go to YouTube and I type in, what is a corporation? And you won't believe it. There's only about 7,000 videos that will explain to you what a corporation is. They are almost all done by attorneys, and they're all trying to sell you in regard to why you ought to have a corporation. Now, I'm in agreement with you should consider a corporation, but I'm not there to sell you anything, okay? But I am going to try and explain to you why you ought to think about it and how you ought to think about it. Now, the first thing that I'm going to, what do I do? Page down?
Just click on the arrow.
Click on the arrow.
Yeah, right here.
Oh, that's even,
trackpad, really, just click.
oh, that's even better. Nice. All right. I'm going to start in on the issue of forming the corporation in order to provide you with protection. Next week, Cody, who happens to not only be a lawyer, but he is also a CPA, and we're very blessed to have him and Ron Jackson, 2 lawyers and CPAs in our firm, is going to talk to you about the tax advantages. If I start to talk about tax, somebody raise your hand. I will quit talking about tax. But as we get into this particular issue, okay, I need you to remember these words, because this makes my heart and all other fellow lawyers' hearts just sing with happiness, because we know we're going to make money. When somebody says, I didn't use a lawyer for that, I just went on the internet and filed it and created my own corporation on the Kentucky Secretary of State's website. It's wonderful. Beautiful. You have saved yourself so much money, and you have probably put yourself in great danger, because I promise you, you didn't do the 10 other things that you were supposed to do. Okay. So as you think about forming a corporation, there's all kinds of different corporations. All right. There's your listing of them. In the old days, and by the way, just so everybody knows, I don't hide anything. I'm 52 years old. Okay. I like to think of myself as young. I've been told by Hannah and my children that I am not young. So let's just do that. In the old days, the most common types of corporations were C Corps and S Corps. All right. C Corps and S Corps were formed by articles of incorporation and bylaws. Okay. There were different ways that those were treated in terms of taxation. Cody will talk about that next week in terms of double taxation and pass through, but those were the 2. Why did they form corporations that way? It was for the legal protection that they provide. You'll often hear it described as a legal shield. Okay. Those were the old days. Most commonly nowadays, however, you're going to hear people talk about forming their own LLCs. Articles of incorporation are now formed by articles of organization. Attorneys are not very tricky. Okay. Bylaws have now become an operating agreement. Okay. Very similar documents, but you form one way, you form one the other. Okay. As you go through and you're forming these, you're going to end up pondering questions like this. So first, you're going to move from that idea of owning things in your own name as a sole proprietor, as an individual, and everything else, to taking those things and moving them into the corporation. So let's use an example. Let's go back to your friend, whoever it may be, that says, I didn't use an attorney. I just formed that LLC all on my own. The purpose was they had a 10-acre tract of land that they wanted to protect. They went to the Secretary of State's website. They did all of those things. and they said, "Ha, I'm done," and they forget to do the deed, transferring from your individual name over into the corporation. Just one example of how you can make a mistake. That's a pretty simple one. It's a pretty obvious one. Okay. But if you don't do it, that time you spent on the Secretary of State's website was worthless. Okay. You have not protected your 10-acre asset. So with that going on, as you get into this and ponder, you're going to say, all right, who is going to be a member or owner of this corporation? Now, we see a lot of people who are individuals that have their own LLC, one person, single member LLC. That is not uncommon. I also see it commonly with spouses. Okay. Husband and wife, 2 members over here, 50% owners each. They're doing the exact same thing. Other times, however, you're going to have other owners. They're not going to be related. Okay. And when they're not related, then all of a sudden that operating agreement becomes even more important because we've got to know the rules of how we govern each other and how we interact with each other. Let me go back to my real estate law class days. Okay. I got to teach exciting subjects, guys. You come in on a Wednesday night and we're going to talk about easements. We're going to talk about deeds. I just do this for 3 hours. I mean, can you imagine how much nonsense I had to get out there to hold everybody's attention? You had to get out there and talk about all this stuff, including contracts. And I started every contracts class with this question. And I'll ask each of you, when do you have to have a written contract? Somebody throw out an answer. Anyway, when do you need a written document?
It's every time.
You say every time? I really like you. That's not correct, but I really like it. What else? When do you need a written contract?
There's an agreement.
An agreement, when it involves real estate, when it's over $500. All of these are great answers, and they are correct answers. And I would have each and every student offer me the answer, and I would say, no, 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 and they would get mad. And they would say, well, what's wrong with those answers? And I said, there's 3 times when you need a written contract. When is that? I said, when you're doing business with your spouse, your family, or your pastor. Okay? Because if it goes bad, you're really going to want that written contract to understand how we interact and engage with one another. Okay? When we're looking at the owners here, we have somebody else that's not family member or friends, etc. You need that operating agreement to understand. If we have a disagreement, how are we going to resolve that disagreement? You won't believe this. Some partnerships, some businesses, they don't make it. They dissolve, they go away. Somebody gets married, they move off. And then you have to wind down that business. That operating agreement should have provisions in there that will tell you, this is how we do things when times are good, and this is how we do things when times are bad, and this is what we do at the very end. Okay? That Secretary of State's website form, though, there's no operating agreement. So you can't imagine the number of people we have come into our office that they form their LLC, they pull out that nice piece of paper, maybe they've remembered to get the EIN number, maybe they've figured out how they're going to be taxed, and you say, where's your operating agreement? And the answer is, well, we didn't do one. Well, that's great, because what you have just done is you have allowed Frankfort, Kentucky to use the statutes, and there is some back to that. That's nice, except you still don't have your legal shield. Okay, you didn't fully give birth and form the corporation. So that's one of the things you got to think about. Also got to think about this concept of who's going to run and manage the business. With an LLC, you'll hear about them being member managed and manager managed. Okay, so if Brian and I were going to form a corporation, it's just the 2 of us, and we're going to be doing small things as the other. I trust whatever Brian is doing. He trusts whatever we're doing. We'll do it member managed. Both of us can go and do whatever it is. We can sign whatever we need to sign. However, we're going to do that. And Brian is going to spend all of his time, I don't know, in Livingston County, up on a farm, not tending to the business way back somewhere else. Not saying that happens, but it's just plausible. All right. Then we might make it managing managed, where I'm the one managing it. He's still a member, he's still an owner, but now I'm the one that's handling the day-to-day affairs of that. Okay. So that's another concept that we go through. And again, those are your organizational documents. So let me stop there for a half second and ask any questions. By the way, how many of you all already have an LLC personally or have dealt with an LLC? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's pretty quick. 6. Yeah. All right. Anybody else got a different type of corporation they deal with? C Corp, S Corp, partnership? You got those. I'm sorry?
Subchapter S.
You got an S? Okay, yeah. So, I love subchapter S. It just works well. All right, so that gives you some ideas. But as you go through this, let's talk about some of the terminology will come up. Corporation, everything that we just named is a corporation, except individual, sole proprietorship, and a partnership. Everything else you're hearing, the C Corp, the S Corp, the LLP or LLC, there's also an LLP that's out there, a limited liability partnership. There's a PLLC, professional limited liability corporation, and they've all got their own little twists. All right. Owners, shareholders, I think we covered that. Who's going to be in there? If we get into a situation where you come in and you sit down in our office or a conference table, and I ask you, what is you're going to be doing? And somebody says, I'm going to buy an apartment building. It's got 8 units. I'm going to borrow some money from the bank to buy, finance it, this, that, and the other. I'm going to run it. This is just going to be my little bit of a retirement project. I'm going to recommend that you form an LLC. I'm going to recommend that we go through this process. I'm going to recommend we get you with a very good accountant very quickly and get it set up so you have a shield. Why? If you think about an 8-unit apartment complex, one of your greatest threats is going to be your tenants. Okay. It's the slip and fall down the steps scenario. Okay. It's the icy parking lot scenario. It is the fire scenario. It is the mold and mildew scenario. One of the things I found really interesting about what was out there on the internet is that they would all talk about the corporation is the shield. The corporation is the shield, and it goes over. And that's correct. What they did not talk about ever is insurance really becomes one of your biggest shields. So as we're thinking about it, we're not just thinking about legally, we're thinking about protecting you and going out and having a good commercial general liability policy insurance that protects you as well. So again, if you think about it in terms of the old castle analogies, I want a moat, and then I want another moat, and then I want a big wall before they can ever try and get to you. Okay. So those things are going on. Again, if you came in and you said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to buy one 8-unit complex. I'm going to buy 8,000, and it's going to be in 5 different states. Okay. I think we might move away from an LLC, and we might be going back to C Corps or S Corps and things of that nature. Not saying we couldn't use an LLC, but I'm saying at that point in time, we might think about that. And particularly if you may have multiple owners, for example, they come in and they say, I want every member of my family to have a share. Okay. That's grandkids, everything else. Well, how many, family members do you have? Oh, about 37. Okay, great. We're probably going to be looking at something a little different than an LLC. So there's different sizes to fit different projects. And again, there's your foundational documents as we go through. Take a look at those. All right. First and foremost, why would we even consider doing it? It's the shield. That's number one. It is asset protection. There is equally good tax reasons to do it, and that can come up next week when you'll hear about that. But that shield is the biggest part. And I'm going to give you that example by going back to another farm story, except this story is true. Okay. I handled a case, I'm going to age, I've already said my age, 10 years ago. And here's the scenario. There was an old gentleman. In fact, he was an old farmer. He was in his late 80s. He tends to his farmlands, this, that, and the other thing in the world wrong with anything he was doing, except for the fact that his eyesight was terrible. And he had been told, do not drive a car. And he had also been told, by the way, if you continue driving, we're going to take your license. Well, in this unfortunate situation, he's driving down a road like this. There's a car up ahead driven by a very nice lady who's getting ready to turn left into her driveway in front of her home. There's a car coming this way. She's waiting. He just doesn't see her for whatever reason and plows right through her and kills her dead. Okay. It's a car wreck case. All right. He has automobile insurance, except he didn't like insurance. Pretty sure he didn't like lawyers too, but he didn't like insurance. So he kept a very minimal amount. All right. She's the deceased. You've got the big city lawyer who's suing now. And as they're looking at it, realizing this guy doesn't have a whole lot of car insurance, does he have any other assets? And the answer is, of course he did. He had a whole bunch of farmland, all in his name. And he knew it because 3 days after she died, he ran to his local lawyer and transferred via deed all of that farmland to another man. Now, think about that for a half second. He knows exactly what is getting ready to happen. Okay. Yes, he didn't have enough insurance. Yes, they're coming. He knows where his assets are, and it's in that farmland. So he tries to transfer it. Now, unfortunately for him in Kentucky, there's something called the fraudulent transfer statute that says when you try and avoid a creditor like that, we can drag it back in. All right. I'll tell you how that story ends. Case settles. He continues to live his life and everything else. It's resolved. It's a civil to wrongful death lawsuit. Money is exchanged hands, this and the other. But that threat and that scare of him losing his assets caused him to try and run and hide it. Can't really hide farmland, but you know what I mean. What if we go back? Now let's go 6 months. Let's go a year. We know that granddaddy or daddy's eyes are going bad. We know he's got a farm in his name, this, that, and the other. You just heard the story in regard to that wrongful death situation. And you went to him and you said, Daddy, granddaddy, just to make sure nobody can get to the farm, what if we formed an LLC? You get it, it's yours, everything else. What if we transfer the farm into that LLC? Okay, so that it's somewhat protected. Might be an entirely different way that story changes. Okay, I'll give you one more in regard to that because this one is a more recent one, and I can't give you the name, but there was a business person in Western Kentucky, and he had a flamboyant way about him, and he cost a lot of people a lot of money. And one of the ways that he did that was that he would form LLCs that would own LLCs that would own LLCs. Okay. And when he formed it, trying to protect from creditors and plaintiffs and asset protection, he formed it in the states of Wyoming and Nevada. Can anybody tell me why he would form in Nevada and Wyoming when he does most of this business here in Kentucky? Exactly. In those 2 states, they will allow someone to form an LLC and hide their identity so you don't know who owns the LLC. I had the pleasure of deposing this business person, and I asked him that question. I said, excuse me, I said, but I noticed that you're doing all your business here, and I noticed that you're forming LLCs in Nevada. Actually, no, he used Wyoming primarily. I said, why would a person use Wyoming to form their LLCs? He got a big smile on his face, and he looked me right in the eye, and he said, to keep nosy lawyers and accountants and government types out of my business. And I said, that's the most honest answer that you've given to me all day. Point being, there's lots of different ways that you can form LLCs and use LLCs. Some are really good ways. Some are being very proactive. Some are being very reactive. But however you go about it, asset protection is going to be one of those. Now, very quickly, I can make sure I'm good on time because I'm not. Yeah, you said that if I got to be out early, that like everybody really had. No, okay, got it.
This is very important.
All right, so here's the other piece. So let's go back to that moment where somebody says, I didn't use a lawyer, I just formed my LLC all by myself, okay? Well, there is a way to quote unquote pierce the corporate veil. They really say you ought to call it the corporate shield because you're trying to do the same thing, okay? So for example, let's go back to the farmland scenario. That farm asset is being moved to an LLC over here. But we don't want to pay the lawyers, so we'll just go to the Secretary of State's website and we do that. So now you're in a deposition, and I'm going to ask you the questions in regard to corporate formalities. Sir, who owns this land? My LLC does. That's excellent. What's the name of the LLC? It's XYZ LLC. That's fantastic. How did you form that LLC? Well, we know the Secretary of State's website. I filled out articles of organization. I paid my fee and filed it on record. Sir, you're 100% so far. Tell me about the operating agreement for this LLC. Well, when you operating agreement, there's the first corporate formality. Miss that. Well, sir, let me ask you this. Do you have a corporate minute book? Something where you keep your corporate records? No. I mean, I got these text messages and I've got a file cabinet. So, okay. Sir, have you ever had a meeting of your board of directors or your members or your managers, however it is, as you would do, if you're a corporation? Well, no. Me and my partner sometimes, and we'll talk about it. That's great. Do you ever keep any minutes to say that, hey, we had a good year this year. We filed our tax return. No, don't have any minutes. Okay. Let me ask you this. Let me show you a check right here. And this says XYZ LLC. Okay. How did you sign that check? Well, that's my name. Does it say comma member? Does it say comma manager? No. Well, what is your title within the corporation? I don't know. My point is, as you go through this, what you realize is they did the bare minimum to form the LLC, but they didn't do any of the things necessary to say we're actually a company. Okay. They don't keep their payroll separate. They don't go through and when they're signing documents or having a personal guarantee, where are you going to keep the money? Well, I put some in my bank account, some in the other bank account over here. You commingle your funds. All they did was that first superficial step of trying to form an LLC. They didn't do the rest of it. Piercing the corporate veil, you'll hear that a lot. People will try and throw it up there. It's difficult. I'm not going to lie to you. It is difficult. We have had instances here within the city of Paducah where we have had buildings, particularly in the downtown area, dilapidated, needing to be fixed up. They were owned by a single member, single purpose, one building LLC. And when they couldn't take care of it, they washed their hands and walked off. Okay. So this is a difficult concept, but it's out there and it's available. And it's also one that you all as professionals need to be made aware of, just because when you're talking to somebody and they say, well, I'm going to use my LLC, you might ask them, hey, do you have any of this stuff? Do you conduct yourself this way? And it will give you an idea of the level of sophistication that you're dealing with. Okay. So let me stop there. Any questions in regard to that? That's a tough concept. All right. I don't want to fool with that. That's one of my favorite lines. I get to hear that a lot. I don't want to fool with that. No, I don't want to do that. So if we don't want to form a corporation, we don't want to form an LLC, then what do we have? Well, by default, you're a sole proprietor, or you've got it in your individual name, or you've got it in a partnership. That's A-OK. And if there is no blood, there will be no foul. But if we own that 8-unit apartment complex, and if for some reason we let the insurance lapse, and if they sue, then it is your personal assets that are now exposed and are at risk. Trust me, if you want to irritate somebody, send a garnishment to their bank and garnish their bank account. It will really irritate. Have the sheriff go over and grab a boat or a tractor. That will really irritate them. And the reason is now what you're doing is you're executing upon those personal assets. We want to draw a nice line in between personal assets and corporate assets. You want to go after the corporate assets? Fine. One guy that was out there on the internets, see, I'm doing that. So it's out there on the internets, and he says, this gentleman, he had 40 different houses, and he's renting them all. This other, he wanted 40 separate LLCs. I don't love that plan. I don't love it at all. I think a better way to think about that is, okay, if we took 2 or 3 and put it into an LLC, but what we're really looking at is the equity of those properties. Okay. If I have a home and it's worth $100,000 and I don't owe anything against it, that's a $100,000 asset right there. If I've got a home, it's $100,000 and I owe 95 against it, that's a $5,000 asset. So I might mix and match and say, I want to group my assets by how much I'm putting at risk. Okay. Again, another way to take a look at it, because we don't want them to be exposed. LLC or corporation, I think we kind of went over that. You've got the idea. It really is not one size fits all. And by the way, I don't want to pick on accountants because number one, I've got one in the back room and he's bigger than I am. When you're having that conversation in regard to should I do an LLC or should I do a corporation, this, that, and the other, there are other factors that come into play that Cody's going to talk about next week. Some of those entities for tax purposes can be disregarded. That may help or hurt something. So we always encourage that if a person's considering that, you need to have your accountant right there side by side in that discussion. Let them offer their opinion too. Because what you don't want to do is have the left hand not knowing what the right hand is doing. So always keep that in mind. Going to touch on this briefly. Operating agreement or bylaws. Next one's going to be those articles. If I can make it work. There we go. Same thing. Little tiny detail items. Articles, regardless where they're filed at the Secretary of State, they're also filed in the county court clerk's office. Just a little tiny detail item that people often overlook. Get your mouse over on that arrow on the screen. Where did it go? There we go. Obtaining tax ID numbers. You have to go through and do those. Cody will talk more about that next week. But then you also get down into the real nitty gritty. Think of things like business licenses. Okay. Think of things such as payroll, withholding, sales tax, payroll if you have that issue. All of those things are items that corporation should be responsible for. What you don't want to do is have the LLC set up, but all the employees for the 8-unit apartment complex, let's say it's one manager, one maintenance person, they're being run by some other corporation over here. Again, we're commingling, we're not making it clean. Talked about business license, that's where it is. And then of course, ongoing obligations. For everybody that's had corporations, dealt with corporations, everybody knows what the annual report is, right? You get it via email, we used to get it in the mail. It is a card where you list, these are the current officers, this is the principal office, is the registered agent, and you send in $15 a year and that kind of thing. It's an annual requirement and you won't believe how many people miss it. And when they miss it, what happens? Your corporation becomes administratively dissolved. All right. So it shows up on the Secretary of State's website as administratively dissolved. There is a packet for reinstatement. It's not the most difficult packet in the whole world. But when you have that moment where all of a sudden you're thinking that corporation better be up and in good standing, you don't want to go and see that it's been administratively dissolved. You're starting in a hole. You don't want to be there. What will it cost me? Oh, sugar. I should not. Did everybody see that? Yeah, close enough. Yeah. Sorry, we got the fees, and of course, I immediately went blue like this. The fees on that thing. I had actually got to answer this question yesterday from 2 different people. Yeah. Thank you. From 2 different people. You get a text, hey, I need to get an LLC formed. What's that going to cost me? My response to both those people, it will cost you less than $1,000. It could cost you a lot less. The problem is I can't answer that question as if everything is a flat rate. I know what it is, because if it's a 10-acre farm with 1 person, everything else, that's about as easy as you get. Well, no, there's 4 of us and we're in business, this, that, and the other. It becomes more complicated. So if you want a rough number and you want some of the annual numbers, that's about where you want. Okay. Now, we talked a lot about assets. Let me just talk for a half second, and that is, remember this. It's not just for assets. It can be for services. It can be for whatever. If you have a dog grooming business, okay, you can form an LLC and do the services within that. Okay. I provide legal services. Okay. I do it pursuant to a professional limited liability corporation. I'm doing the exact same thing. So when you think about forming a corporation, don't just think of it in terms of assets and protection that way. Think of it in terms of whatever activity it is that you're engaged in that you want that legal shield that will protect. Okay. I think it's a question everybody should ponder. I'm not saying you should do it, but you ought to ponder it. You ought to go in with your eyes wide open, make an intelligent decision of, wait a minute, this is what I'm prepared to risk, or I'm not prepared to risk. That's it. and then you take it from there. All right, so with their 10 minutes being left, let me ask this question. What questions do you all have? Hi, Brian.
Hi. Do you have?
My
any-
name's Glenn.
My name's.
I like long walks on the range. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Do you have any examples of where a real estate agent should have had an LLC that you've dealt with, or just in the past that you've worked with, that would pertain to kind of us in our daily activities?
So let me go one step further in that. And that is, and by the way, just so everybody knows, I went to law school. Yeah, right. While I was there, my father said, "You know what you want to do?" He said, "You ought to go and get your real estate license." Yeah, I'm like, Dad, I'm gonna be a lawyer. That wasn't gonna be a realtor. I know, but while you're there, you can. Well, you all remember how you were got your license, okay? I had just taken 3 hours of law and then 3 hours of principles. So I was able to sit and take it. So I am actually a licensed realtor. You'll be happy to know my license has been in escrow now for about 25 years. And I'm not doing any of the CLE in regard to it. So, but when you talk about that, I'd ask this question. What is it that the real estate agent is doing? So if they're buying a house for an investment purpose, absolutely. If you're talking about, should I, Brian Wyatt LLC, and that kind of thing, you can. The problem is your licensure issue may get in the way, because the licensure board, they want you, they want your name and everything else. So I think if you take a look at that, that may be where it holds you up a little bit. Now, you can always work underneath an LLC. You'll never have any issues there. So I think that it really depends on what you're doing. Yeah. Other questions?
I see a lot of DBA
Yeah.
doing business as.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually a great question, because it comes up more and more nowadays, and I don't know why. A lot of folks get into the marketing, into the branding, into the name. Okay. There is nothing sexy or exciting about Denton Law Firm PLLC. Zero. Okay. And we chose the name. Right. But there's nothing exciting about that. But if I wanted to be a super duper Paducah lawyer, I wouldn't go out and form Super Duper Paducah Lawyer Inc. What I would probably do is I would go to the Secretary of State's website, and I would have an assumed name, and that assumed name would be Super Duper Paducah Lawyer. Okay. And so that way I can go out there and say, "Hi, I'm Glenn Denton. I'm with Super Duper Paducah Lawyer." And they can say, that's what it is. What I'm really saying is, I'm Denton Law Firm PLLC doing business as. Okay. It's a marketing tool. You do need to register it so people know who it is. What you would never want to do is just do a DBA as an individual. Then you've accomplished that. It's a great question, because you see it a lot. Paducah Bank, Wow Bank, McMurray and Livingston, Attorneys for Your Life. I don't think Morgan does one. If they do, I don't want to think about it. But anyway, you get the idea. You get the idea. Other questions? Come on.
All right, so as far as having an LLC and our paperwork that we put in front of our clients,
Mhm.
I mean, how would we want them to know? So if they ever came back to us and said, "No, I did business with you, not your LLC," how would we do it? Would we want to, Reese Johnson DBA this, or my LLC DBA Reese Johnson? What's the best way to put that in front of them? And they know that that's who they're doing business with, not necessarily me.
Full disclosure. And I mean by hitting them right in between the eyes. So your business cards would say Reese Johnson LLC. You would sign everything Reese Johnson LLC. Every contract you had said Reese Johnson LLC. And we never make the mistake of just doing Reese Johnson. Okay. That way you go through and you're always establishing that, wait a minute, this is Glenn over here, but this is Glenn and his LLC over here. So as you go through it, you've got to hit them over and over and over again. You will notice, so having been to a closing, you've got a corporation involved, and all of a sudden the bank wants a corporate resolution, okay? And they always forget till the very last minute they want the corporate resolution. But the corporate resolution, what it's really stating is, hi, I'm a corporation, I'm in existence, I'm in good standing, and the person getting ready to sign can sign on behalf of the corporation. So when you have that LLC issue right there, you can also do a corporate resolution and say, by the way, you need to acknowledge this. I'm signing this, and I'm signing it, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my LLC. It's not me. So I think that you get them right between the eyes as hard as you can.
So pertain to our agency agreement though? Our agency agreement that we have to have signed,
So you gotta be very,
LLC on it.
so you gotta be very careful there, because when you get your agency agreements and everything else, they're gonna want your name as a licensee. Okay, and so you gotta watch that. You can't mix and match. And that's one, like, we could do a whole nother hour in regard to that.
That makes sense.
Yeah, because keep in mind, while I am practicing law as Denton Law Firm PLLC,
Mhm.
my law license is in the name of Glenn Denton, and I can't transfer it any other way. My real estate license, it's on Glenn Denton. It's really old and dusty, whatnot, but
So as we do our daily work with a client buying real estate, our licensing name is what we use.
Yeah.
But if we, as an LLC, purchase real estate for our own, that's where the LLC.
Exactly right.
That was where I was going. I wanted to clarify
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Now, we're good on the paperwork.
Yeah, you stole it,
I'm
Brian.
sorry, I'm sorry. You can ask it.
Because the answer was really good.
Could you repeat that?
Brian, go ahead.
So if we're doing our job as a real estate agent, helping someone purchase real estate, our name, Andrew, will be on that sheet and on those paperwork. If we're buying real estate for ourselves or for a corporation, then our LLC name will need to be on that paperwork. So, yes.
Good question. What else?
Okay, so I'm gonna tell myself, so if we think we've set up one and it's not correct, how do we set up an appointment with you and make it correct?
Um,
To
So
be protected.
you have the three options.
Okay,
I am the least desirable of the three options.
okay,
Cody is 1 and 2, and
Okay.
Hannah is
Just-
3.
okay,
And she just got here like 10 minutes ago. Okay. And she's already smarter than I am. So, but we take care of
actually,
that.
Hannah and I've emailed, so.
Yeah,
I'll just-
good.
And by the way, so, guys, I love practicing law. It's a lot of fun. It's very frustrating at times, but a lot of people refer to it as the ultimate backstage pass, because I get to know businesses and corporations really intimately, particularly when there is a problem. My favorite, I don't even have a really good one, is when they come in and they bring in the corporate minute book and they're like, we formed a corporation and I got the corporate minute book here and we need to get it updated. And I'm like, oh, that's great. And I look in there and I'm like, 92? The last time you did anything, this was 1992? Really?
Wow.
Well, yeah, we need to get around to it and everything else. And of course, the answer is no problem. We'll cover that. We'll figure it out. But that's not uncommon. Not uncommon. So, good question. What else? I think I've got 60 seconds left. And I get, if I, sincerely, we appreciate being invited here today. You all do a lot of good work. I really do hope you'll think of yourselves far more than just buying and selling. You're involved in economic development. It may not feel like that at times, but when the executive moves to town, when the doctor moves to town and whatnot, part of that process is getting them to plant roots, and it generally starts with a real estate transaction. And so we appreciate it. And if we can ever help you all, you let us know. We will do better on food next week because Cody has got a full hour of taxation. So we'll probably come in with some really heavy food next week.
To really put us down.
Really put you down. Yeah.
Do you have a joke to leave on?
A joke to leave on?
Yeah.
It's lawyer jokes, of course. And watch, I can almost get the whole room to speak in unison, okay? What do you call a busload of lawyers with 2 empty seats going over a cliff?
Tragedy.
A damn shame. And they're talking about the 2 empty seats. So thank you all very, very much. Have a great day.
So
I get to practice law.
So my free question.
No, you don't have 3 questions.
Okay, we'll go here. Let me get all-
What do you got?
So what I heard.
Mhm.
All right, real quick before y'all go, 2 o'clock, we're gonna do a watch party here in our pizza for the regional awards. 2 o'clock right here. Thank you guys for coming.
Yes, thank you for having us.
And thank you guys, appreciate it.
I got the flash drive.
Hang on.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for letting us use your computer too.
Oh, you're welcome.
We'll see y'all again next week.
We don't have kids. But you know, Mr. Reeves.